The following is a non-profit fan-based translation of another fan-created work of fiction. Mobile Suit Gundam. Advanced Operation is owned by Sunrise Entertainment, Bandai Entertainment, and Family Soft Koei-sa, Lightdeed. Support the official release of both the game and the other works of the original author. Mobile Suit Gundam Advanced Operation by Sonku Inoue. Chapter 7. Among the Yukon classes of submarines, the U-99 model, the final production variant, was the largest. It was equipped with 12 missile bays, 6 torpedo tubes, and could carry 4 mobile suits. Colonel Neumann. In the hangar, a man who had been gazing up at the towering figures of the modified Hy-Goggs and Zeon turned slowly when his name was called. His brown skin and the stern beard typical of an Arab marked his heritage. Though short in stature, his presence exuded the aura of a battle-hardened warrior. Indeed, since descending to Earth during the One-Year War, he had navigated countless naval battles without air superiority, earning the unwavering trust of his subordinates. This man was Colonel Neumann, commander of the Zeon 6th Marine Mobile Suit Combat Division. "So, you're certain it's the Pegasus-class ship?" he asked after listening to his staff officer's report. Naturally, his gaze had to tilt upward to meet the eyes of his taller subordinate. "Yes, sir. The Lebanon 2nd Marine Corps, on patrol off the coast of Rhodes, confirmed it." "I see. So, this is the ship that gave Sinclair so much trouble." "It's fast, as expected," Neumann said with a smirk. He had anticipated that the Pegasus-class ship would avoid the Zeon stronghold in Izmir and head south along the western coast of the Aegean Sea. However, from that course, it was impossible to determine whether it was heading to a Federation base in Africa or Cyprus. Now, it had been confirmed that the ship was moving eastward across the Mediterranean towards Cyprus. Sinclair, whoever thought it was heading to Africa, is truly an unlucky man, Neumann mused. Sinclair, who had let the Pegasus-class ship slip away at the Odessa base, was now planning to intercept it by crossing over and through Turkey and around the Mediterranean, setting up a position near Libya in Africa. In contrast, Neumann had spread a reconnaissance net around Rhodes and remained stationed in Tyre, across from his home base at Cyprus. As a result, Neumann had outmaneuvered Sinclair. In ancient times, the people of Rhodes melted down the weapons abandoned by the Macedonian army after repelling their invasion and created a colossal statue of Helios to commemorate their victory, Neumann said, deliberately invoking a story that went against his faith's prohibition of idol worship. Now, if we were to melt down that Pegasus-class ship, how big of a statue could we make? He pondered. Though the thought was meaningless, it was also thrilling. It will take about 5 hours for the Pegasus-class ship to reach the Larna military port in Cyprus, correct? Yes, that's correct. Then, as Marines, it would be best to strike while they're resupplying. Understood. Neumann nodded at the staff officer's agreement, and the mobile suit team leader stepped forward, saluting. "Sir, all ships are ready to launch mobile suits, awaiting your orders." "Very well. The 6th Marine Division will sortie at full strength. Our target is the approaching Pegasus-class ship. Once it docks at the Larnaca military port in Cyprus, we will strike during its resupply and ensure its destruction." After hearing the mobile suit team leader's report, Neumann grabbed the microphone and announced to the entire fleet. "This is also under the orders of General de Tour. All personnel, give it your all. Sortie." Neumann deliberately invoked the name of General de Tour, commander of the Earth Zeon Force's Western Front, to show his troops that they were favored by the higher-ups. "We'll show those young elites from space that we're different," Neumann thought as he boarded his modified Hy-Goggs. In the end, that was what it came down to. Cyprus, known in Greek mythology as the birthplace of the goddess Aphrodite, was a lush land rich in archaeological sites. Even now, it remained a tourist zone under the protection of the Federation government. Historically, from ancient Rome to the Byzantine era, through the rise and fall of the Crusades and into modern times, Cyprus had been a strategic hub in the Mediterranean, repeatedly ravaged by war. In modern times, it had been divided between Turkish and Greek communities. Using the latter as a pretext, the Federation had built a military port in what was arguably the Mediterranean's premier resort destination. Even a child could see through the Federation's thinly veiled motives. Kelly Schneider drove a military jeep from the Larna Military Port's command center to the dock where the Ilnid was moored, unable to shake his unease about the future. "They won't even take in civilians or the wounded," he muttered. At first, he couldn't believe the base commander's words, but now he understood. The Larnaca military port was on the front lines. Across the water in Tyre was a Zeon remnant submarine base, and skirmishes were frequent. A base like this couldn't possibly take in refugees or the wounded. They were lucky to even receive supplies of food and ammunition. The Federation's upper echelons might have built this base as a resort, but on the front lines, the people here lived with death at their doorstep. "Damn it!" Kelly cursed. The fact that Cyprus, a former British colony, still drove on the left side of the road only added to his frustration. "Are you okay? Is there anything you need?" Raisa gently asked a wounded soldier. The officer lying on a makeshift bed in the corridor shook his head sadly. Word had already spread that the Larnaca military port had refused to take in the wounded. Raisa smiled softly, stood up, and left the room. The infirmary was overflowing, with many private rooms converted into makeshift wards, crammed with wounded soldiers. Despite this, the port had refused to take them in, and no additional staff had been provided. The fact that the Ilnaid's medical staff hadn't been on half-shift rest, and thus hadn't suffered casualties, was a small mercy. But the overwhelming lack of personnel was evident even to Raisa, a novice. "Are you done over there?" a voice suddenly called out. Raisa turned to see Senri Suzuki holding a bundle of dirty bandages. As always, he wore a smile, even while doing such menial tasks. Before boarding the Ilnaid, during their peaceful student days, Raisa had found his cheerful demeanor in the face of grunt work almost laughable, even mocking him for it. Now, she felt ashamed of her past self. "You're amazing," Raisa said, praising him. "Huh? Oh yeah, there's just so much of it," Senri replied, misunderstanding her compliment. He lifted the bundle of dirty bandages and made a light-hearted gesture. That was just who Senri Suzuki was. Raisa couldn't help but smile at his offbeat response, though Senri didn't notice and continued. "We're barely keeping up with the wounded. There's no way we can handle the refugees, too. I've asked Adele and Doug to help, but I wonder if they're doing a good job," Raisa said, her brow furrowing slightly. It wasn't that she didn't trust them. She was just worried. Actually, since Adele and the others from the rescue division have studied first aid, they should be taking care of the wounded, Senri suggested. "Really? I wouldn't want Adele taking care of me," Raisa said with a cold smile. But for some reason, Senri didn't find her comment too harsh. It was because she had said, "I wouldn't want Adele taking care of me," rather than, "I wouldn't want Adele and the others taking care of me." Neither of them noticed the distinction. Most of the refugees taken aboard the Ilnaid were military personnel or their families, but since the Odessa base was located on the outskirts of the city, many civilians had also been taken in. "We've taken in quite a few refugees. This C2 block has a lot of civilians," Adele said to his partner Doug, after finishing distributing lunch rations. "Hey Doug, Are you even listening? Adele asked, annoyed. It wasn't like he wanted to have a deep conversation, but being ignored didn't sit well with him. Hey, I'm talking to you. Adele shook Doug's shoulder, finally getting a reaction. Wow, she's gorgeous, Doug muttered, his eyes glazed over. Following Doug's gaze, Adele saw a stunning woman with straight, light red hair. With those features, she might be a Lunarian. Oh, she's coming this way, Adele said. Doug's expression shifted from dazed to surprised as the woman approached, weaving through the other refugees. Her almond-shaped eyes, accentuated by her sharp lower lids and thin eyebrows, gave her an elegant appearance. Yet, she wasn't coldly beautiful. Tall and slender, she moved with a gentle grace. Her voice was soft as she spoke. Are you with the military? Where is this ship headed? Well, officially, Adele began, about to explain that they were students, but Doug cut him off. Yes, that's right. We're the ones protecting this ship, Doug said, puffing out his chest and speaking with uncharacteristic confidence. The ship's destination is Africa, he added with a grin. Africa, the woman repeated, her tone subdued, contrasting with Doug's beaming enthusiasm. The refugees had already been informed that the ILNID couldn't offload them at the Larna military port due to the Zeon submarine base across the water in Tyre. While most of the refugees were military personnel and hadn't caused any unrest, everyone was uneasy about their destination. By the way, can we meet with the ship's commander? The woman suddenly asked Adele. It was a simple question, but Adele felt she had chosen her words carefully. Something about her felt off. Brigadier General Manov is in critical condition, so meeting him is... Is there something you need from him? Adele asked. No, it's nothing. We just wanted to ask about the arrangements for the refugees. The woman stammered. Don't worry. We haven't finalized a destination for the refugees yet, but we'll protect you until then, Doug said, completely missing the point. Thank you, the woman said with a slight bow before quickly walking away. Doug saluted her until she turned the corner and disappeared. Man, she was beautiful. This ship isn't so bad after all, huh, Adele? Doug said, grinning from ear to ear. But Adele couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the woman. He just couldn't put his finger on it. Something's bothering me, Adele muttered. The blaring sirens interrupted his thoughts. Enemy attack? Adele and Doug exchanged glances. Over the intercom, the emergency call for pilots echoed. To the mobile suit deck, Adele shouted, and the two of them took off running. Chapter 8. Adele rushed into the normal suit room and, without a word, began putting on his pilot suit, but Raisa was faster. You're late, Raisa said as she dashed out of the normal suit room. She always had a thorny remark. That hadn't changed since their days at the Odessa Aviation Academy. She wasn't cute at all. Adele frowned, grabbed his helmet, and followed after her. As he ran down the corridor, putting on his helmet, he felt the vibrations from the launch of a mobile suit. By the time he reached the mobile suit deck, Raisa had already moved the Gundam Mark II B-type to the catapult deck. Adele realized he was late. Raisa's unit, launching. Burner's unit. Claire's husky voice came through the helmet's headset as mobile suits hurriedly launched one after another. Feeling a bit of panic, Adele quickly boarded the cockpit of the Jim 2, determined not to fall behind the other units launching in rapid succession. He moved the Jim 2 to the catapult deck. Meanwhile, small windows popped up all over the panoramic monitor, displaying the status of the enemy search. Unlike the attack on the Odessa base, the Larnaca base was providing a lot of information to the ILNID. Hy-Goggs and Hy-Goggs, amphibious mobile suits. It was clear that nearly 20 enemy units had already breached the minefield laid east of the Larna military port, near Ayia Napa. Adele, the Aqua Gyms from Larnaca base will go ahead. Coordinate with the powered gym units to prevent the enemy from landing. Roger that. Adele's unit, launching. Adele responded to Claire in an unnecessarily loud voice, partly because he had been slower than Raisa. Nonetheless, he launched in the gym too. He felt the need to prove himself. Lieutenant Colonel Newman's 6th Marine Mobile Suit Combat Unit had remained on Earth after the end of the one-year war, operating as a remnant force. They engaged in commerce raiding at sea, essentially acts of piracy, without air support. This was not what Lieutenant Colonel Newman, a man of high military discipline, had desired, but it was necessary to survive the Titan's relentless pursuit of the Zeon remnants. The situation changed dramatically in 0088 when Haman Karn's Neo-Zeon launched a campaign to retake Earth. General Durrell successfully secured the Mediterranean coast from Izmir in Turkey to Cairo in Egypt, in a lightning-fast operation. After securing supply lines, General Durrell reinforced Neumann's 6th Marine Mobile Suit Combat Unit with a large number of mobile suits. For Neumann, who had led a destitute force, this reinforcement was of absolute value. From then on, Neumann, who would not normally have been under General Durrell's command, began operating under his authority. With the addition of units like an upgraded Hy-Gogg, the 6th Marine Mobile Suit Combat Unit became a formidable amphibious force, like fish in water. They became the strongest amphibious unit, a status that remained unchanged even after Vice Commander Haman Karn's death. Form an assault formation centered on my squadron. Don't forget, our target is the Pegasus class. After confirming they had cleared the minefield, Lieutenant Colonel Newman ignited the external jetpack, accelerating the Hy-Gogg rapidly. The following Zegok-E units followed suit. To reduce water resistance, they folded their flexible arms, lowered their shoulder armor, and advanced in cruise form. Inside the Hy-Gogg's cockpit, shaken by the intense water resistance and shock waves, Neumann spotted a hover LST on the radar. It was the mothership of the Federation's aquatic mobile suits, the Aqua Gym. 4 torpedoes launched simultaneously from the Monoeye's side launcher, homing in on the hover LST as it was deploying its mobile suits. The hover LST was destroyed in an almost disappointingly quick sinking, scattering debris into the sea. Neumann's Hy-Gogg shot past the wreckage. Above, missiles launched from a Yukon submarine flew overhead. Dull explosions echoed. The land was near. Neumann pulled the control stick, aiming for the surface. Splash! The Hy-Gogg burst out of the water in a forward-leaning posture, like a ski jumper. In midair, it detached the external jetpack, raised its shoulders, and extended its folded, flexible arms forward. At the end of the extended, flexible arms was a large hand missile unit. Just before landing, the cover of the hand missile unit was ejected. The cover, released by compressed gas, flew backward, revealing the missiles within the Hy-Gogg's claws, glinting ominously in the sunlight. "Now this is combat," Neumann exclaimed, his excitement evident. For Adele, this was his first experience in mobile suit combat. Of course, as someone aiming to be a rescue mission pilot for the Zeta Gundam, he could operate a mobile suit. He had trained extensively in his Tangram training machine for using cruise form, as well as a Jim Canard for using mobile suit forms, all with the Zeta Gundam in mind. However, unlike Raisa and others in military-related fields, Adele's rescue course had no combat training curriculum, but the battlefield didn't care about Adele's personal circumstances. "Fall, damn it!" he shouted, trying to forget his fear amidst the beams flying around. But his shots missed. The situation was progressing far faster than Adele, with no combat experience, had anticipated. Once the Aqua Gym unit's defense was quickly breached, allowing the Zeon forces to land, the area near the dock where the Ilneid was moored became the main battlefield. Adele realized how naive he had been to think he could one-up Raisa with a snarky remark before their sortie. Survival was all that mattered now. Looking cool was the least of his concerns. "Adele, fall back!" The moment he heard Lieutenant Gary's roar, a powerful impact struck Adele. His body was thrown forward violently, and the seatbelt dug into his shoulders. A Hy-Gogg had emerged vertically from the water and slammed its massive claw into the Gym 2's face. The steel claw tore into the Gym 2's head. Adele couldn't comprehend what had happened as the main monitor of the Gym 2 went dead. "Are you okay, Adele?" Lieutenant Gary drew the Mark II's beam saber and slashed at the Hy-Gogg. He couldn't use the beam rifle, as it might hit Adele or cause an explosion. As Lieutenant Gary's Gundam Mark II attempted to leap forward, the Hy-Gogg used Adele's Gym 2, which it held aloft with its right arm, as a shield and fired its left arm's beam gun to keep the Mark II at bay. "Damn it! Why isn't the monitor back online yet? What's the status of the sub connection?" Adele struggled to restore the monitor in the cockpit of the Gym 2, which was swaying violently. Fortunately, the Hy-Gogg was so focused on its battle with the Mark II that it assumed Adele's Gym 2, being used as a shield, was immobilized. Once Adele managed to secure a visual through the sub-monitor's image correction, the Hy-Gogg's mono-eye filled the screen. "Ah!" With a scream that bordered on a shriek, Adele drew his beam saber and stabbed it through the Hy-Gogg's head. The beam saber sank into the hilt. In an instant, a low, muffled sound was heard as the Hy-Gogg exploded, sending the Gym 2 flying and landing hard on its back. "Are you alive, Adele?" Yeah, somehow. "All right, that's your first kill." Lieutenant Gary kicked the still-burning wreckage of the Hy-Gogg off the pier and into the sea. But there was no time to bask in the afterglow of his first kill. The screams of battle could be heard over the speakers from all directions. Doug, Senri, and Orvis were struggling. "Adele, cover the Ilneid directly." After giving the order, Lieutenant Gary swiftly headed off to provide support. So this is what combat between mobile suits is like. Unable to wipe away the sweat pouring down his face, Adele had no choice but to follow orders and provide escort for the Ilneid. "Can't we push through?" Neumann, who had seized the initiative in the battle and pressed forward relentlessly until landing, was now forced to stall just one step away from reaching the white base-like ship. The reason was that after landing, the battle had devolved into close-quarters combat between mobile suits. While the Hy-Gogg E-Kai and Hy-Gogg Kai had land combat capabilities, they were not designed for prolonged ground battles. From the outset, the white base-like ship was a transient enemy for Neumann and the 6th Marine Mobile Suit Combat Unit. Their attempt to destroy it was nothing more than a jab at elite soldiers like Sinclair, who had been lounging comfortably in space. Therefore, there was no need to push themselves here. They had already inflicted significant damage on their immediate enemy, the Larna base. "All members of the 6th Marine Unit, this is Lieutenant Colonel Neumann. The operation is over. We're returning. Don't get caught in the support fire from the Yukon subs. Retreat." After issuing the order, Neumann fired the beam cannon at the Gundam Mark II, the most agile mobile suit in the Federation's force, but only managing to blow off half of its shield. Well, that's fine. Acknowledging the skill of the Mark II's pilot as a fellow warrior, Neumann returned to his role as commander. Thump. With a light back jump, the Hy-Gogg Kai quietly disappeared into the sea from the pier. "We'll meet again someday." "All right, the enemy is retreating. Good job, rookies. Let's return to the Ilneid." As the retreating Yukon submarine crossed the second defense line, Lieutenant Gary's cheerful voice came over the speakers. The monitor showed Lieutenant Gary's Gundam Mark II, accompanied by Lieutenant Leopard's Jim II, walking past a destroyed warehouse to return to the Ilnid. These two machines had performed magnificently to rescue Adele, who had been pinned down by the Hy-Goggs, and the other Academy students who had been in dire straits. Although half of the shield was melted and the armor showed signs of damage, their appearance gave Adele and the others an absolute sense of security. "You took quite a bit of damage, but are you okay, Lieutenant?" "Yeah, Adele. Don't worry. It's nothing serious. Besides, both you and I will have to brace ourselves for a scolding from Old Man Quaker." Lieutenant Gary compared the heavily damaged head of Adele's Jim II to the melted shield of his own, Mark II, and laughed heartily. "Yeah." Adele laughed along, but at that moment Raisa's anguished cry rang out. "Lieutenant, your mobile suit!" What? In an instant, a dull explosion sound was heard, and Lieutenant Gary's Mark II exploded without warning. Hearing Raisa's scream, Adele turned his gaze to Lieutenant Gary's Mark II, and the explosion seemed to happen in slow motion. A spark ran across the left chest of the Mark II where it had been hit, and in that moment, a blast occurred inside the hard armor, causing it to bulge momentarily. The explosion's flames burst through the weaker parts of the armor, spewing black smoke. The Mark II, still retaining its original shape, was a pitiful sight. Lieutenant Leopard, who had been walking alongside Lieutenant Gary's Mark II, managed to squeeze out a voice as the Mark II, spewing black smoke, slowly crumbled and fell with a loud crash. "No way. Not the lieutenant. Lieutenant Gary." Adele and Raisa couldn't find any more words. "It's my fault, the lieutenant. Damn it. If only I'd been more alert. If only I'd noticed sooner." After returning to Ilnaid's hangar, Lieutenant Leopard continued to blame himself. His tears had dried up, and his eyes were red and swollen. For what felt like the 100th time, Leopard punched the spot on the floor where the Mark II usually stood. Acting Captain Kelly and the main crew surrounded Leopard, their faces filled with sorrow. For the Ilnid, Lieutenant Gary had been the pillar of the mobile suit team, and for Adele and the others, he had been a great mentor. But for Leopard, it wasn't that simple. Leopard had joined the Earth Federation forces at the end of the 1-year war. At that time, the Earth Federation forces were rapidly deploying mass-produced mobile suits like the GM, and even new recruits like Leopard had their training expedited and were sent to the front lines. The fact that a 16-year-old boy survived was entirely thanks to the guidance of a seasoned squad leader, who at the time was Lieutenant Gary. After the 1-year war, Leopard followed Gary and fought in the AEUG, battling the Titans and Neo-Zeon. For Leopard, Lieutenant Gary was a mentor, a lifesaver, and a comrade in arms. And now, Lieutenant Gary had died right before his eyes. "Damn it!" Leopard raised his arm to punch the floor again, but Raisa, unable to bear it any longer, stopped him. "Please stop, Leopard. It's no one's fault. This is war." As his raised arm was stopped, Leopard slowly turned around. He tried to say something, but no words came out, and all he could do was tremble. Chief Petty Officer Quaker gently placed a rough hand on Leopard's shoulder. "That guy's probably up there in the afterlife, bad-mouthing you all while drinking with that Andrew fellow. Right, Leopard." Those words brought forth the last of Leopard's tears from his red, swollen eyes. Chapter 9. Before leaving the Larna base on Cypress Island, Raisa and Claire gathered wildflowers blooming by the runway and made a bouquet, which Lieutenant Leopard threw into the Mediterranean Sea. With that, Lieutenant Gary's story was over. There was no time to mourn his death, as the Ilnid received orders from headquarters to proceed along the African coast of the Mediterranean and cross the Strait of Gibraltar. As cold as it seemed, Acting Captain Kelly had to set aside his emotions and carry out the mission. He promoted Raisa to lieutenant and appointed her as the new leader of the mobile suit team. Ideally, he would have promoted Lieutenant Leopard to lieutenant and made him the team leader, but he judged that Leopard was not in the right mental state for it. Additionally, to address the lack of personnel replacements, they decided to recruit volunteers from the refugees to work in non-combat roles. When Adele went up to the bridge, a cheerful voice rang out from the operator's seat, a voice he hadn't heard in a while since fleeing the Odessa base. Next, turn this on. The radar sensitivity adjustment is... Oh, there. That's it. Claire was teaching a refugee woman how to operate communications and landing operations. As Adele handed Acting Captain Kelly the repair report for the heavily damaged Jim 2 from the previous battle, he asked, "What's going on there?" "Well, Claire's a lively one. You'll get used to her high-pitched voice." "No, I mean, that woman..." Adele chuckled at Kelly's slightly off response and clarified that he was asking about the refugee woman Claire was teaching. She was the same woman who had requested a meeting with General Manov during the patrol with Doug and the refugees. "Ah, that's Jessica Fletcher. She has a space cruiser license, so we've asked her to help with the operator's duties, which have been a burden on Claire alone." As Kelly said this, he confirmed their current location. They had entered former Algeria, and called out to Jessica. "Jessica, it's a shame to have to ask refugees for help, but we're short-handed. We appreciate it. Please don't worry. I'll do whatever I can to help." Her gentle response was a testament to her high level of education. Claire added her own praise. "She's an amazing instructor. Jessica remembers everything I tell her right away. Well, if all my students were like that, I wouldn't have had such a hard time." Kelly glanced between Adele and Claire with a slightly troubled expression. "Hey, that's mean, instructor. I worked hard too." Jessica let out a small laugh, and Adele and Claire joined in. It was a warm laugh they hadn't experienced in a while. In the midst of this peaceful atmosphere, 3 blips appeared on the radar. Identifying the units. Confirmed. 3 Gaplants from the Algiers base. Claire returned to her seat to confirm the units. "Are they here to greet us?" Kelly ordered Claire to confirm, but Adele felt something was off. The Gaplants' movements were too direct. "Doesn't something seem wrong?" "Yeah, definitely." Though there was no concrete evidence, Kelly seemed to sense it too. "No response from the Gaplants," Claire exclaimed in frustration. No matter how many times they called, there was no response. "Hey you! Gaplants! Are you listening? Respond already!" Claire shouted into the microphone, half angry. Could it be that the Algiers base has fallen? At Jessica's murmur, Adele and Kelly exchanged glances. They could see the color draining from each other's faces. "Claire, all hands, battle stations, emergency launch for all units. Man the gun stations, anyone will do." Adele's unit is launching, followed by Raisa's unit. Jessica's calm voice came through the helmet's headset as Adele mounted the Jim 2 on a base jabber. Unlike transformable mobile suits like the Zeta Gundam, standard mobile suits couldn't fly on their own, and required flight systems like a base jabber to do so. This is Adele, taking off. Despite his unease with the unfamiliar base jabber controls, Adele soared into the African sky in his Jim 2. Jessica's murmur had been correct. As Adele and the others launched their mobile suits, the Gaplants, realizing their disguise had been blown, revealed their true nature. "Starboard! What's with the barrage?" Kelly shouted, but the Gaplants relentlessly targeted the starboard side. Adele and the others were intercepting, but the base jabbers were no match for the Gaplant's transformable mobility. The fact that they hadn't been shot down yet was a testament to their skill. A direct hit to Ilnide's starboard side sent shockwaves and explosions throughout the ship. "It's no good. We can't hold out." Helmsman Ed Kessel, overwhelmed by the Gaplant's attacks, shifted the Ilniad's course to the left, heading inland. In an instant, a massive explosion rocked the port side. This was no ordinary beam attack. The explosion and shockwave caused the ship to tilt heavily. "What's happening?" "We've been hit. Probably a direct hit." Claire's vague reply prompted Kelly to look at the radar, but aside from the 3 Gaplants, no other enemies appeared. From the ground? Long-range fire? Jessica also looked at the monitor and murmured. Given the Gaplant's earlier deception, Kelly took Jessica's murmur as fact. "Take the Ilnid back to the sea. Gain us some altitude," he ordered the helmsman. "Mobile suit team, eliminate those Gaplants. We're breaking through." A second explosion rocked the port side. "Eliminate them, you say?" Adele tried to aim his beam rifle at the Gaplants, but they kept disappearing from his sights just as he was about to fire. And the moment they disappeared, the Ilnid would take another hit. Adele understood the logic. The Gaplants, in their mobile armor form, would approach at high speed, transform into mobile suits just before attacking, and use AMBAC, active mass balance auto control, to perform sudden decelerations and sharp turns, maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft. He understood, but his body couldn't keep up. Especially for Adele and the other Rescue Corps students, the mobile armor forms of transformable mobile suits was merely a long-distance transport method for quickly reaching disaster sites. Transforming from mobile armor to mobile suit form and using AMBAC for maneuvering was something they were seeing for the first time. The stronger the preconception, the harder it was for the body to react, even if the mind understood. Their attacks on the Gaplants were always a beat too late, and this delay only increased the Ilnaid's damage. The Gaplant's beam cannon struck the Ilnaid, causing yet another explosion. Even for Raisa and the other military academy students, the Gaplant's movements were abnormal. They were nothing like what the textbooks described. This is real combat, but still. However, unlike Adele, Raisa's body instinctively tracked the Gaplants despite her confusion. "Take this!" The Gaplants, likely wanting to make effective use of ground-based artillery, probably from a Zamel, a large mobile suit with heavy firepower, were fixated on attacking the Ilniad's starboard side. This meant that no matter how tricky their maneuvers were, their attack points were limited as they avoided the Ilniad's barrages. If the points were limited, her body could react. "Got it." Raisa concentrated the Mark II's beams into a single point and fired. The thick beam struck the Gaplants. 2 beams hit directly, and the Gaplants exploded near the Ilnaid. Shrapnel hit the ship's armor, creating a high-pitched clanging sound. "All right, that's how it's done." She couldn't help but praise herself. Having been promoted to team leader after Lieutenant Gary's death, Raisa felt the need to prove herself. 2 more to go. Raisa saw the remaining Gaplants transform from mobile armor to mobile suit form and rapidly slid sideways. Beams were fired into the space where the Gaplants had been just moments ago. "Is that Adele? That guy seriously?" It was frustrating, but also a little satisfying. The Gaplants fired their beam cannons at the Ilnaid, transforming back into mobile armors and retreating to avoid anti-air fire. This created a brief window before their next attack. "Burner, concentrate fire with the starboard megaparticle cannon in 20 seconds. Raisa quickly gave orders to Burner's Jim 2, which had briefly appeared in her field of vision. "Got it, Raisa." By the time Burner responded, the Gap Lance had turned around and were charging again. Raisa scattered beams to block their path. She hadn't intended to hit them in the first place. The Gaplant effortlessly weaved through the beams, closing in on the Ilnid. Transforming from a mobile armor to a mobile suit, the Gaplant executed an AMBAC-assisted rapid deceleration and shifted into an attack stance. However, a barrage of beams from Burner assaulted the space where the Gaplant was maneuvering, forcing it to perform another sharp deceleration to evade the beams at the last moment. Evading at such close range meant delaying its movements by a split second. Naturally, this caused the Gaplant's motion to overlap with the timing of Adele's beams, which hadn't been able to keep up with its speed. 3 beams struck the Gaplant, followed by a particularly large explosion. "I hit it! I did it!" Adele's excited voice reached Raisa. The other Gaplant, seeing 2 of its comrades shot down, immediately turned tail and retreated. The artillery fire from the land had also ceased. "Did you see that, Doug?" "I took it down." Even as he confirmed the Gaplant's retreat, Adele gleefully and proudly shared his joy of the kill with Doug and Senri. Listening to their conversation, Raisa removed her helmet. "Honestly, boys." She chuckled at her own words and brushed back a strand of sweat-soaked hair sticking to her forehead. The Ilnid was on a course that would take it across the Mediterranean via Majorca Island. "Wait up, Raisa," I said. "Wait." As soon as Raisa returned to the Ilnid and stepped out of the pilot suit locker room, Burner called out to her. Tired from the battle, she pretended not to hear and tried to walk away, but Burner roughly grabbed her shoulder. This was unlike him, Raisa thought. He was usually much cooler. Not that it mattered, but she slapped his hand away and freed herself. "That hurts, Burner." She turned around and gave him a smile. "Ah, sorry." "It's fine. So, what is it?" Regaining his composure, Burner slightly lowered his chin. "What was that during the battle just now? It felt like I was just a decoy for Adele." Raisa understood what Burner was getting at. Even if unintentional, she had indeed allowed Adele to take the glory. "Don't tell me. Raisa, do you have feelings for him?" Raisa's eyes widened for a moment as she pondered the question, but only for a moment. Something uncertain within her quickly took shape, and she recognized it as a genuine emotion. "I don't know for sure, but I think I like him. Adele, I mean." It felt awkward to admit her feelings for another man in front of someone who liked her, but she felt it necessary to tell Burner. Adele was a handsome and top-performing pilot with a bit of an ego, but fundamentally a good guy. "So, you're serious?" "Yeah. You're a better man, Burner, but I don't know. Falling for someone is strange." Raisa realized that if Burner hadn't pushed her, she might not have been able to clearly understand her own feelings for Adele. She felt a bit guilty, but there was no helping it. "I'm not very good at being honest, so keep this between us for a while, okay?" Burner let out a deep sigh. "So the only path left for me is being a friend, huh? That's sad." "No, there's one more path," Raisa said, pointing to the rank insignia on her collar. "Superior and subordinate." "Let's stick with friends," Burner said, looking up at the sky. "Major Bingo. Enemy transport squadron spotted. The ambush was a success." On the Zanzibar's mobile suit deck, Sinclair nodded with satisfaction at Lieutenant Ulrike Meyer's cheerful report. Though they had lost track of the Pegasus that Serrana had fled to and were struggling to pursue it, General Detour's net had caught the enemy transport unit. Given the circumstances, the destination of a unit moving covertly outside the regular transport routes was limited. "Good, but don't wipe them out completely. Leave 1 or 2. They'll lead us to the Pegasus. Make it look like they escaped." "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Meyer responded with a crisp salute. "This will work. Even that Pegasus—" The thought caused the left corner of his lips to curl into a daring smirk. Behind him, the sound of Lieutenant Meyer and the others powering up their mobile suits echoed. These weren't the outdated models used during the attack on Odessa Air Base. They were the new mobile suits, the Stuka, and its long-range support unit, the GAF, provided by General DeTore along with the intel on the enemy transport unit. The Stuka, sometimes nicknamed Goblin, due to its smaller size compared to standard mobile suits, was prized for its exceptional mobility, high production efficiency, and ease of maintenance. It was gradually replacing older models like the Zaku, Goof, and Dom. "All units, follow me. Let's do this right." With that, Sinclair leaped into his beloved Breda.